Hi everybody, this is Damien from Legend Life. As you know, I'm all about sharing inspirational stories about people who are living their best life after 40. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Belinda Kirk. Belinda is an adventurer, explorer, and social entrepreneur. Belinda has spent the last 25 years leading expeditions to remote places, as well as undertaking her own adventures, inclusive of walking across Nicaragua, rowing around Great Britain. She led a group of females who also achieved a Guinness Book of World Record. She also has done a bunch of interesting stuff, and I won't share all of it because she's going to share it with us today. So how are you going today, Belinda?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to speak to you.
Very good. So, well, to kickstart this, maybe you can give us a little bit of background about yourself and then where your interest in adventure kind of started.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, yeah. So I'm an explorer, a mother, and a campaigner, really, for getting adventure back into people's lives and into our schools and into our medicine and everything, really. And it's all, I think it all started at a very young age. I was very lucky that I had a very outdoorsy, adventurous young childhood. I grew up on an island called Alderney, which is in the Channel Islands between England or Britain and France. There's a little cluster of small islands. And island life is kind of a bit like, I don't know, 50 years ago life, I suppose.
Yeah.
In that, you know, there was the worry of stranger danger wasn't really relevant on an island where everyone knew everyone's business. There were hardly any cars, and so and all these things that we worry about for our kids, those were sort of taken away in the most, and I could be free and wild as a kid. The word feral was often used about me. And I think when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, I would had a secret garden and I would make dens and climb trees. And I had it was very idyllic, those years, really fond memories of those years. And I think that actually gave me like a base that's always been there for the outdoors and for adventure. And that's what I'm trying to do for my son now as well. And that's what I'd love to be the case for all of our kids, really, is that they have adventure and nature. And how do we do that? You know, it's a difficult question, but how do we do that?
Okay, so basically your childhood, very adventurous, and then what was perhaps your very first adventure, kind of like the place you went off and then you kind of said, I want to be doing this the rest of my kind of life, because it seems like there was some kind of aha moment, which kind of because you started a lot earlier than a lot of other people have.
Yeah, so probably when I was 16, I did a Duke of Edinburgh Award expedition, which was an expedition in Britain, in the mountains in Britain. And that really brought back adventure into my teenage years. And that set me off on a new path. So when I was 18, I went to Africa, traveled, worked on an expedition in Africa and traveled around as an assistant, and then traveled around Africa on my own. And I was like totally green. I'd been on a couple of family holidays in Europe and a French exchange, and I really was, you know, in at the deep end. But I came back from that adventure with a completely different view of myself and the world. And it gave me the confidence to go for it gave me the first steps in confidence to go for what I wanted.
Yeah.
And that was to do more adventures. At the time I thought it was travel, and I wanted to travel and see the world, which I do as well. But I think what I've realized over the years that it was about seeking out challenge and adventure in the outdoors, and that's what makes me come alive. So that was really the setting. That was the big turning point.
And so after that, you sought out opportunities and a career that kind of enabled you to have more adventure?
Yes. So I came back from that and I did a biology degree. I wanted to work with David Attenborough and save the world, save the whales and save the animal, all the kind of, you know, all the endangered animals and so on. That was something I'd always talked about at a younger age. Actually, I was always interested in zoology and the sort of natural world. But I came back from there and I was like, right, I've got the confidence now to try. And I thought, I want to go and, yeah, save the whale with David Attenborough. So I did a biology degree. And then I kept going on these adventures. And over the years into my early and mid-20s, I kept leading expeditions. So although I thought I'm heading to work at the BBC to work with David Attenborough, that's what I want, actually, along the way, I kept leading more and more expeditions. And then I was like, ended up with this dual career where I was working in natural history and adventure television, but also in expedition leadership. And as I had more and more experience of taking expeditions all over the world, particularly jungles and deserts, the more I did that, I used to pay to go as an assistant, and I'd get my expenses paid. Then eventually I was actually getting paid as someone who actually had built up a big experience.
Yeah.
And so I was starting to sort of forge a career, but I had this strange dual career because I think I had partly the BBC, the idea of working for the BBC was my parents had sanctioned that it was a sensible career.
Yeah.
So it was, can pay the bills or be sensible. But I also want to be an explorer, I've realized. So I'll do the two, and the two kind of fed each other quite well.
Yeah.
Because the more I went to strange places, the more TV crews would say, oh, can you come and help us get into this weird and wonderful place? Because we know you've been there and we don't know how to get in there. And we want to get a film crew in there. So it was strange. I was trying to be sensible, but I was also trying to listen to my heart and what I wanted to do. And the two things kind of, well, life sometimes, I think if you keep following your passions, even if you can't do it all the time, as long as you don't turn your back on them, you will start going in the right direction. That makes sense.
No, it definitely does. So, no, very good lesson there about, you know, if you follow your passions, eventually you kind of like things come together, don't they? So I think a lot of people get stopped from doing something because they need it all planned out. So unless they can see where they're going, then they're unprepared to take the step to make the journey. And then in your case, you're kind of like showing that you didn't know where you were exactly going, but you knew what you liked, and you were trying to stay true to what you liked doing. And then eventually it kind of like worked out.
I think that's true. And I think you can slightly twist the way you look at the world, and you can choose how you view yourself and your path in life. You can be sensible and try to plan everything, or you can realize that you can't plan everything. Life isn't like that.
Yeah.
And by trying to do that, and by trying to control everything, because we all get sucked into this idea of trying to do that, but by trying to do that, you actually miss out on the opportunities that might be just out of your reach. And I also a great believer that if you start following your passions, if you do stuff just purely because your instinct is calling you towards it, because you believe in it, because you are passionate about something, that it will always be the right decision. You'll never ever regret that decision. It will always lead you to the right place. It might lead you through some ups and downs.
Yeah.
It might lead you through uncertainty, but uncertainty is not always bad. Uncertainty is opportunity. It's not always something to be scared of. Uncertainty is exciting as well. And adventures taught me that, to not be scared of going into unknown situations, of preparing as much as you can. But if you only do what you know you can do, or if you only go into situations that you can control or that you understand, you're missing out on so much. So yeah, I'm a great believer in follow your passion as much as you possibly can, because it will always take you to the right place.
Yeah.
And also, sorry, another thing on that, I also think that if you follow what you believe in, it will take you to a place that you will see yourself in the world differently, and therefore you can continue on that path. If you don't take those steps and you just go down the path that's been given to you, or that's easier, or that's less scary or more certain, you'll never get the same view from that place. You'll never see yourself or the world in that different way. You'll always be on the same track. So you have to sometimes take a risk, because taking risks is where the magic happens in life.
Yep. No, definitely.
That makes sense.
No, definitely does. Well, you know, everything in life requires you to kind of like step out your comfort zone, because your comfort zone, I sometimes call it the dead zone, because, you know, nothing new is really happening there. You're just kind of like doing all the same kind of like stuff. And then a lot of people are not very happy with their supposed comfort zone. And then actually, if they took the step to get out of the comfort zone, they would actually have that opportunity to create the life they're kind of really interested in. So, but they're not prepared to step out of that comfort zone. So I guess, which we can discuss a little bit later, adventure leads you to getting comfortable, getting out of your comfort zone. So,
absolutely.
So where did you get this, you know, so obviously you've gone off on a number of different expeditions, you're leading a lot of people, but also it seems you've developed this interest in really sharing adventure with other people. So how did that come about, where you felt, I want to share what I'm experiencing with a bunch of other people?
Where did it start? It probably started because for a long time, I knew that adventure was my therapy, it was what made me come alive and helps me to live my best life. And I think once you realize that, it takes a while to process that and to really accept that and to identify it, to understand it. But once you do, you have to share that. I mean, you just have to, because it's too important. And I think the world that the societies, especially in the developed Western world, the societies we've created, they're very synthetic, they're very comfortable, not easy, but comfortable. And adventure is a wonderful, if not the perfect sort of antidote to the routine and the types of stresses that we have in modern world. Adventure, you can step out of your everyday world, step into a new world, redefine yourself, find yourself, feel alive, feel, you know, the sense of achievement and wonder and awe and all of these things. And then you can come back. Adventure is wonderful because I go off on adventures and I enjoy them, but it's also what I bring back from adventure to my life. And therefore what I've seen other people bring back to their lives from adventure. So after sort of 26 years of taking people on adventures, I can see again and again and again, people transforming via adventure through challenge, uncertainty, and even a bit of discomfort, which those elements of adventure that are fantastic.
Yeah.
even discomfort. And so through the crucible of adventure, I've seen it so many times now that I knew it wasn't just working for me. I knew it worked for other people. And therefore I had to share that, and I had to, I think you spend your 20s finding out who you are and proving to yourself and maybe to others, if you feel you have to, what you can do and what you're about. And then I think for me in my 30s, it was all about putting something back and kind of going, I don't have to prove anything, especially by now I'm 46. I definitely don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I finally, the joys of getting older, I don't have to prove anything in my 40s to anyone. But even by my 30s, I felt that it was less important to prove stuff to myself. It was about sharing something. And I think now I'm in my 40s, it's even more about, it's about sharing a wonderful gift that I found, luckily so young, and I've been able to use, because the modern world is so sick, I think, the way that our societies are so bad for us in so many ways. And so the 26 years of taking people on adventure, then the years of research that I've put into the book, into positive psychology, evolutionary psychology, outdoor education theory, all of these sorts of really trying to work out why, it was like, I have to share that. But I'll tell you when it actually clicked for me. It was about 19 years ago. I was stood outside the Royal Geographical Society in London which is like the home of expeditions in Britain. And we'd just come back from the Amazon about 6 months earlier. I was the youngest chief leader the British Exploring Society had ever had. I was 26 at the time. And I was coming back with all my team and all these young people I'd taken on the expedition, and we were presenting our expedition. And it was raining. It's Britain.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't rain as much as Americans think it does in Britain. It's great. Well, not just Americans. Everyone thinks it rains in Britain. It's actually much better than that. Anyway, but it was raining. It was a classic grey London rainy day. I remember it so vividly. We were stood in the queue, and this woman came up to me and she said, "What have you done to my daughter?" And I just thought, oh no, is this the one that was bitten by a bat? Is it one of the kids who got parasites? I was trying to think. I'm in trouble. I'm going to have some answers here, preparing myself. And then she gave me this enormous bear hug. And she said, Alice is just completely transformed. She's doing much better at school. She's helps out at home. She's got new friends. And I was like, Alice, it's Alice's mum. And Alice had been a teenager on the expedition who had struggled in every way, academically, socially, but through the expedition, she had really transformed. I challenged her, but just enough to get her out of her comfort zone, but not enough to put her into the panic zone. And she had really stretched herself. She had taken it on board. Her self-confidence had really changed. And on the expedition, I saw this transformation, but I didn't really know if it would stay. But 6 months later, here's her mum hugging me in the rain. And we were like both close to tears, hugging away. And it was like, wow. And it was when I remember it so vividly because it was the moment that I thought, it's not just me. This isn't just my therapy. This works for so many people. I mean, I'd seen it work for other people, but this actually lasts. This is a lasting legacy. Adventure can really help people. And so for me, that was like a huge turning point.
Okay, no, brilliant. So let's talk, before we go and talk about your book and then also Explorer Connect. So what kind of adventures do you personally look to seek out for yourself personally? So you obviously lead expeditions, but what kind of an adventure do you look for in your life?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's changed over the years. So my last big adventure, I just had to get out of my comfort zone. I'd done a lot of work in jungles and deserts for 15 or so years. I felt although it looked adventurous, I wasn't actually pushing myself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, because whatever we do, if we do it for a long time and we get really good at it, we're not actually pushing ourselves. So I thought, I love what I do, but I need to do something to really challenge myself, to dare to fail. And so I looked around and I heard about ocean rowing. And so I thought about, rowing the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean and all these awesome things you can do. And then I heard about the fact that only one boat had ever rowed around Britain and all the other boats had failed. And I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the one. Like I'd rowed a bit at university very badly on flat water. I hadn't really done much at sea, but but I had done so much stuff in expeditions, in exploring. And I just knew that was it, because I wanted to do something where nobody was going to tell me how to do it. There was no paper seat. There was no kind of book about this is how you do it. There was no manual. I was going to have to figure it out with the right support and experts and people.
Yeah.
And so for me, I found that challenge because I needed to push myself out of we all have our own comfort zones. And I really wanted to feel that wonderful feeling of coming alive by really pushing myself and daring to fail. Because you only know that you're outside your comfort zone when you actually feel like you might fail, when there's no guarantee of success, and in fact quite a high guarantee that you'll fail.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're going to come alive. So that was why I picked that last sort of big expedition. At the moment, the adventures I'm looking at are very, very different, because a huge, but also just as scary in a way. I have a 3-year-old now, and that changes everything. And I left it until I was, in my 40s to have a child, because I was having so much fun and I couldn't understand how I would keep being me and having adventures if I had a child. I just like, how do I do that? So I put it off. And anyway, thankfully didn't put it off too long. And we're very, very lucky to have a gorgeous little chap called Jackson. And now I thought I'd go back to exploring and expedition, and big trips and so on. But I actually don't want to leave him, which I really, it sounds like I'm some awful person before, but I really didn't realize that I wouldn't want to just leave him for a month here and 2 months there. But I really don't. And so now it's like, well, we need to do expeditions and adventures with him. So now I'm in a whole new zone of so my adventures now, or our adventures as a family, it is a completely different ball game. We've just got back to kayaking because we've worked out how to get a toddler into our double kayak, and we've started doing that locally. We're doing lots of little adventures locally. We're doing a big walking adventure around the coast of Britain, not the whole of Britain. Although maybe one day. We're doing the Southwest Coast Path, it's called. It's about 630 miles, I think. We're doing that bit by bit as a family, because we want a goal and a big adventure to focus on together. And also my partner's a bird artist, and we're going to go to Canada, if COVID allows, early next year, to search out some birds in different remote parts of Canada. So a bigger adventure altogether. So that's, but we'll all go together. So that's a whole new challenge in itself.
No, that's brilliant. So, well, I guess, because a lot of people listening in who have families will say, oh, I can't do it because I've got kids. And then where you're going, well, I'm actually changing how I'm thinking, and then I'm looking at how I can include my son to go off and have experiences with me. So, I think that's a pretty good message to be kind of like given out to a bunch of parents. So children don't have to limit you. You're only creating limitations. You just have to rethink how you do it.
I think you can even go further and say that children open new doors. I know travel isn't the thing at the moment with COVID, obviously, but a lot of my friends with children who've traveled have said that they've had a whole different experience because they've had children with them. That people have welcomed them into their homes or welcomed them to be part of things that they would never have been invited to if they hadn't been there as a family unit, with children. And so I think it's more about saying, and also, isn't it wonderful to watch your own children discover the world with fresh eyes? That is wonderful. So what we're trying to do, although the first 2 years of parenting were just survival, I have to admit, and I'm not, anyone who's in the early stages, it's okay if you're not adventuring. It is just keep going. Bless the little gorgeous things, but it is just survival at times, isn't it? But now that we've kind of got an even keel, it's like, how do we not get back to who we were, but how do we embrace some of our old life and the stuff, like how do we keep doing the stuff we love and do it all together? And it is challenging, there's no question. It is hard. But I think you just have to keep trying.
No, definitely. No, great stuff. So now let's talk a little bit about Explorer Connect, which seems to be that transition from that moment where you kind of like realized you wanted to share. So what was the inspiration for Explorer Connect, and then what are you looking to achieve with Explorer Connect?
Explorers Connect, I set up because I could see that there was an expedition community out in the world and they had no way to connect to each other, literally. And because before I'd analysed it as much, I thought it was expeditions that changed lives, not adventure. I.e. big, massive international expeditions could change your life, which I still think they can, but I think also smaller adventures can also help you on that road. So for me, it was about spreading the gospel of expeditions and exploration. Over the years, it's morphed and evolved as my views and beliefs have evolved. I mean, it's entirely set up to try and inspire people to go on adventure. So now it used to be to inspire people to go on big adventures. Now it's to help inspire people to go on big and small adventures. I run some adventures and courses myself to enable people to learn skills and get confidence to go and do their own big things as well afterwards. I help people put teammates together for big expeditions if they're going to walk across this or kayak down that, and know, big or small event. If they want to find teammates, I mean, finding the right teammate is or set of teammates is a hugely important step into making your adventure dreams come true. But also, since it's evolved. We're also, Explorers Connect is also running a conference around adventure and well-being, trying to bring the science to light that really proves to us and shows to us how and why we should add adventure to our lives and to our public policy, and our families and so on. So there's lots going on.
No, it sounds pretty exciting. So, well, now let's focus on the book, because this is the most recent addition to your, willingness to share your mission for getting more people out there adventuring. So, number one, what was the inspiration for the book?
So, I think 26 years of seeing adventure help people and knowing that it's important, and also realizing that we see it as a frivolous luxury. We don't really value adventure as an important part of our well-being. And also because I spent about 7 years researching why adventure is so good for us, because I just wanted to know. I wanted to read this book. If I could have got my hands on this book 20 years ago, it would have really helped me. It would have empowered me. It would have given me it would have answered a lot of the questions that I've been asking as to, like, how do we use adventure to transform lives, and how do I use it? How can we have schools and societies using adventure better? And why on earth do we keep ignoring the call to adventure in our modern world? So, that's kind of where it's come from. And it's finally lockdown meant that I actually stopped moving long enough to write the thing. I don't know how I would have finished it without lockdown, to be honest. Writing book is so hard, and I just wanted to go out and have adventures with my son, and I was just like, tied to the computer. But I'm glad that I did it, because this is after 26 years of taking people on adventures and living for adventure, this is the message that I have. This is what I want to say. This is, I've got something I want to share, and I hope that it will help people. And I hope that it will start an adventure revolution.
Brilliant. So, well, now let's kind of like dive deep into the book a little bit. And then, as you said, you've invested about 6 or 7 years, kind of like really come to terms with why adventure is beneficial for people, the science behind it. Maybe you can give us some highlights about, why is adventure so good for us?
Yeah, so I kind of split the book into the core areas where I think it is really helpful to us. It's hard to paraphrase 250 pages, but so I talk about this call to adventure that is a very natural. We have a natural call to adventure, and I think we all have it. Some of us reply to that and go out and find adventures, and others, the modern world that we've created, we stifle it, and we think that it's frivolous and we should ignore it because we need to get a proper job and do sensible stuff and be responsible and So I talk about how there's eons of history that explain why adventure has been a key part of our evolution and who we are as humans. It's a key part of who we are. And then I kind of break it down into the areas whereby adventure can help us. We've talked about, for example, growth, personal growth, and the comfort zone. So there's a big chapter on why expanding our comfort zone is good for us. But I think we sort of touched on that.
Yeah.
I also talk about why adventure can help us to face fear, which is a really empowering tool to go into life with. So as I said before, going on adventure is good for us, but it's what we come back from adventure with, personal growth or skills or knowledge that we can implement in our everyday life that makes adventure so important. So being able to face fear, for example, the more you know about fear and the more you've faced fear and have dealt with it, the more that you can be brave in your everyday life.
Yeah.
I see fear as, because I understand fear as the flight or fight response, and it not only prepares you to fight or run away, it also prepares you to be the best physically and that you can be. It actually gives you kind of, I call it superpowers. It gives you particularly good senses. You know, all your senses are heightened. It stops your digestion and pushes all your sugars into your muscles so that you're faster and stronger than ever. And you hear about sort of miracles happening where mothers pull cars off children and stuff.
Yeah.
And they can't possibly have lifted that weight. This is all fight or flight response. It actually is preparing you to be the very best you can be. So for example, when I do public speaking, which I've taken up over the years because I want to spread this idea that adventure is good for us. And I was terrified of public speaking. I absolutely hated it. And I'm still scared of it now, but I recognize that fear and I reframe it as a superpower. It's charging me, it's preparing me, it's getting me ready to do the best job I can do.
Yeah.
So adventure is really good at reframing how you see things and how so that you can then come back to the ordinary world, your everyday world, and behave differently, you know, and seize more opportunities, I think, for that reason. I also talk about children and how children, particularly in our modern worlds, we've taken away rites of passage. When children become adults, we have no rites of passage for them anymore, like we always used to in our tribal days.
Yeah.
And actually, we're really, adventure's the perfect rites of passage. It's the perfect way for children to become adults. And I go into a lot of detail on that. It's a great way of healing. There's something called adventure therapy, which is very, very well used in America, New Zealand, Australia. It's only very new in Britain. It's not being used enough. And in Europe, but it's a wonderful way of healing. So, for example, particularly military, there's lots and lots of data and lots of amazing stories whereby people can be healed by adventure. But for example, military personnel with post-traumatic stress have gone through adventure programs, and it's really helped them to go from post-traumatic stress through to post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And actually, it's a really good healing vehicle. Also for drug addicts, actually, a lot of people with addictions have used adventure as a wonderful way of healing. So I talk about that. There's also, it's the perfect way, I think, of building relationships. We are going on as a family on this adventure to Canada, and the big walk that we're doing around Britain, or around a part of Britain, because you step out of the everyday stuff, the noise, the distractions, and you just work together as a team, a family in this, you know, to achieve a goal, or to at least try to achieve a goal. It doesn't actually matter if you achieve that goal. And that's a wonderful crucible for building relationships and bonds. And so you get the camaraderie and all of it. I could go on so long about all of these things. It's also a great way of finding meaning. And a lot of people who go on adventures, and I've got some wonderful stories in the book. It's about finding meaning. And I don't know, there's so many stories. I'll tell you one story just because there's so many ways that adventure can help. We were talking about healing, and there was this one story that still is so, it was one of my, I don't know, it was a wonderful moment chatting about this, interviewing about this story. There's this older teenager called Sam, who had stopped speaking. He'd had a lot of depression and anxiety, and he'd gotten to the point where he'd got selective mutism, which is he physically can speak, but he just chose to stop speaking because he was struggling too much, and that was his response. They tried all sorts of CBT, all sorts of therapies and different things. And then they put him on a very early, the very first pilot scheme of surf therapy in Britain. And so this wonderful surf therapy 6-week course of learning to surf. The idea was just to help him feel a bit better, I suppose, and just to kind of help him. Yeah, I don't think anyone expected it to cure him, but after learning how to surf and building that resilience of falling off and getting back up again, and the joy of catching your first wave and all of that wonderful and positive emotion he was going through and resilience building, in the last lesson, his parents came down to the beach to watch him and to see, and because he'd obviously indicated that he was getting a lot out of it. And just suddenly, for no particular reason, he just started talking to his surf mentor. And his parents were sat there, and his parents came up to them at the end, and he said to the surf mentor, he said, his father said, "Thank you for giving me back my son." And because of the impact of that first pilot surf therapy course in Britain, it was in Cornwall in Britain, and also the other children on that course and how it helped them, it's thankfully grown since then into something called the Wave Project, a charity that now does surf therapy for thousands of kids, or has done it for thousands of kids across Britain. And it's just just these incredibly powerful, wonderful, life-changing transformations. And when everything else had failed, adventure was the key. And I think, anyway. And so there's lots of stories like that through the book. So there's lots of popular science, but it's really a book about stories of people transforming.
Yeah.
And really, what I want people to read it for is because I want them to go out and do more adventures.
Yeah. No, well, which is a very good mission. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, because I had a brief read of the introduction to the book, you also talk about the negatives of us not leading more adventurous lives. So what are some of the negatives? Because I guess a lot of people don't really realize that the fact we are not following our call to adventure is actually negatively impacting us. So maybe that will, change some perspectives as well.
I think I think the reason why adventure is so good for us, whether it be just healing or just to help us to be the best that we can be, is because the world that we've created is so unnatural. We spend too much, all of us, including me, we all spend too much time, or more time than we were designed to, sat in boxes, watching boxes and screens, driving around in boxes, and we're not challenging ourselves. We've become disconnected from nature, but we've also disconnected from natural challenge and also uncertainty. So many of my friends are scared of uncertainty, and adventure's taught me that, and for example, that uncertainty is so great. It can be such an opportunity. You can also frame it as exciting, and also comfort. We don't have easier lives. We have much more stressful lives.
Yeah.
I think, because the stress that we undergo is a very different type of stress to the stress we evolved to deal with, which doesn't make life easier, but it makes it harder. But adventure is a very natural stress. It's a wonderful, playful stress, and it's how our brains evolved to work, playfully and adaptively. And so it's a great relief from the kind of routines and the long-term stress that we put ourselves under. Sorry, I was going to say something else. I've forgotten what it was now. And yeah, so and yes, and this idea of discomfort, I think discomfort is actually it's something that I know it sounds, this is where I can lose people, but I know it sounds unusual to seek out challenge and discomfort. But look at all the people doing do you have Tough Mudder races and stuff? Kind of ultra marathon.
We don't have them here, but there are ultra marathons and other kind of events over in Brazil. But yes,
that involve discomfort as part of there's going to be discomfort as part of it, but that makes the taking part even sweeter, because you know that it's worth the difficulty, or it might be the physical discomfort, or it might be the fear of failing or looking foolish. Yeah. But you know that by going through that, you not only build resilience, but the victory is sweeter because you overcome it and you've built yourself up. And so there's all, I think the modern world that we've built has made us in lots of ways physically and mentally weaker. And so by taking on and seeking out challenge and adventurous challenge, particularly with the uncertainty and a little bit of adversity, not too much, it's not masochistic, that we can build ourselves up to be the best that we can be, and we can then achieve the best lives that we want to live.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So I guess it'd be good to get your definition of adventure, and then how people can include more adventure in their life. You know, what are the things they can do?
It's a really good question. Adventure is a really hard thing to define. I've defined it in the sense of, I think it involves uncertainty, adversity or discomfort, and challenge. Those are the three elements that I think you need to have a proper adventure. But from another angle, you could also say that by just stepping outside of your everyday routines and your everyday world, you are going on an adventure. So it might be that you live in a city and you like to go for you exercise every day and you go for a run, but you run the same route every day.
Yeah.
Well, a little adventure that is really easy is you could go on a different route each time. You could use it as exploring. You know, if you go, right, I'm going to go for my run, but I'm going to go and explore. I'm going to find different parts of the city. I know that's the sort of thing people have been really good at through these lockdowns, isn't it? Really expanding their minds of what's possible. Also, you can do things like geocaching on runs. So you can actually run around and geocache. I think geocaching is pretty international. You can try, I think adventure is the difference between, say, swimming in a swimming pool and swimming outside in a lake or a river.
Yeah.
Obviously do some checking first before you just jump in. But it's that sort of thing. Or instead of tennis, take up climbing. Climbing is an amazing climbing is an amazing way of going on an adventure, and you can fit it into an evening or an afternoon or a weekend. And also camping, sleeping outside, even if you just do it in your garden or on your balcony. It's just doing something a bit different. It's stepping out of your everyday routines and taking a little outdoor challenge. I do think the best adventures, if not all adventures, are kind of outside. The odd exception is a bouldering wall or something. But stepping out into nature. Nature in itself is unpredictable, so there's your uncertainty. You know, you don't know whether you're going to get, and you also, as well as getting the benefit of adventure, you also get the benefit of nature. So that's like double hit of good well-being, sort of inputs or whatever.
No, definitely. So what would you say to someone who's listening to this interview who, you know, is a little bit unhappy, unfulfilled by their life and would like to do more adventure, but, you know, they a little bit scared to take the next step? You know, what advice would someone obviously very adventurous like yourself, what would you say to this person?
I think two things. Firstly, take the first step. Don't put it off. It's so easy to make bucket lists and never get to them. I think the most important thing is to take action now. Do something now about it. Book something. Go and research, you know, where you can get yourself a bike, book a kayaking lesson, whatever. Do something straight away. Start making it happen, because otherwise you'll put it off, because we all do. It's human nature. And I think the other thing to know is that the first step is the hardest. Once you the first step is the biggest unknown. It's scary. If you know that, then you know that this isn't going to always be this hard. You just have to go for it and take that first big step. Any size of step work is good. You don't have to suddenly go, I'm going to climb Everest. You can, any size of step, but just take that step, knowing it's going to be the hardest first step. And then after that, every other step is easier. And you also get this feedback loop. The more adventurous stuff you try, the more you push your comfort zone, the more positive feedback of feelings of achievement, feelings of self-confidence start coming back to you. So they build you, so every other step is easier afterwards.
No, very good advice. So let's change direction a little bit. So I have a series of questions that I like to ask people to kind of like finish off. So what's your definition of ageless living?
My definition of ageless living. I don't know. I would just say I've never defined, I wouldn't want to be defined by a number. And so I'm not going to define myself that way. People talk about growing old disgracefully or gracefully.
Yeah.
And I don't care about that. I want to grow old adventurously. That is the most important thing for me. I want to keep living. I'm alive. I'm very lucky. You know, I think the older you get, the more sadly you start to lose friends, and the more you realize you're living on borrowed time. And I know that's a bit morbid, but actually you can use it as a positive thing.
Yep.
And go, right, I am alive now. I'm lucky to be so, and I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do the stuff I want to do, because you never know what's going to happen.
No, definitely. So, and your advice to someone approaching 40 or over 40 who's like viewing it negatively?
I think you decide how you view it, and everyone else can jump in a lake.
Okay.
You know, I think it's not that I don't understand. I do, especially I think for women it's hard. You also women can start to become invisible if they get older, and you know, and I'm as bad as I'm not as bad, but you know, I'm as caught up in that as well. You know, I buy face creams. I've started to get grey hair, and so I've started to have my hair highlighted to hide the grey. I started that this year. It's like, oh no. But I keep having to remind myself that that's just vanity, and okay, I'm allowed a bit of that because people will judge me on how I look. So but not to forget that I judge me, and how I judge me is the most important thing, and my friends and my family close to me. And so, yeah, I think you have to just remember that to hell with everyone else, as much as you can tell yourself that, and you've got to live. I mean, age is just, I don't know, it's irrelevant really, isn't it, in some ways? And if it's not irrelevant, then it reminds you, TikTok, you're going to be dead soon. So that stuff you're talking about doing, you better do it now.
Yeah. No, very good point. So, and 3 life lessons you've learned in life, you know, over, you know, your adventurous kind of like lifestyle, which you think would be of value to other people?
Oh, so I don't know. 3 things is hard. So probably don't be afraid of failing, because that will just be afraid of not trying. So that is like number 1. I think that's what catches people up the most, or holds people back the most. So don't be afraid of failing. The most successful people in the world have all failed a lot. It's really important. I think be kind to yourself is another one, and be kind to other people, because your relationships are actually at the end of the day the most important thing you have. Your relationship with yourself and your relationship with your friends and family.
Yep.
And third, I don't know, well, go on adventures, really. Live, feel alive, go out and fight. Don't worry about, life is not about avoiding discomfort. It is about living, about feeling alive and finding life. It's filling your days with life. That is what we're here for. So yeah, go and have an adventure.
Very good. So last question, what's your definition of living a legendary life?
I don't know. I think I probably said it. What's the definition? Being, well, sorry. Being not unapologetic, not, and I don't mean not caring about other people or being respectful of other people, but being authentic and not apologizing for who you are. I think that's a hugely important part of, that's a great part of growing old, getting older. I'm not old, older, is that you realize you don't have to apologize for who you are, and you don't have to pretend to be anyone else. You just have to be authentic. And that is the only way.
No, very true. Well, Belinda, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. I'm sure a lot of people will get value out of this and certainly be inspired to go off and have adventure and join you on this adventure revolution. So for people who would like to find out a little bit more about you and your book, how can they find you online?
My website's belindakirk.com. I do a bit of Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. That's @ExplorerBelinda. Have to admit, I don't live on social media, so but I will get back to you eventually. And I do like to share ideas of how to do adventures out there on the social media. And also the book is available on Amazon and on I know it's available in Kindle and audiobook and hard copy. And if you're in Britain, you can buy it in all the bookshops as well. And I'm not sure where it is internationally. I think it's, oh yeah, you can buy it in bookshops in Australia and New Zealand at the moment. And I think at the moment, the publisher's arranging it to be available internationally in America and Canada as well soon. So depending on when you watch this podcast, it hopefully will be in a bookshop in America and Canada then as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks again. It's been wonderful talking to you.
It's lovely to talk to you, yeah. And hopefully we'll meet up and have an adventure one day.